Hey everyone, how are you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are doing awesome. Now, in today's episode of Learn to Write Sci-Fi, we are going to discuss, yesterday we discussed, are your main characters or your main race, are they going to be humans? Are they going to come from Earth? Or are they going to come from some other planet that they originated from? Kind of like Star Wars, where they come from some other planet in some other galaxy, but still there's humans, right? All right, so in today's episode, though, we are going to discuss the general concept of you creating the rules for your universe. All right. So normally, when you first start trying to write sci-fi, right, you're a brand new author, maybe you have some experience, maybe you're just trying out some different stories. When you get to, okay, you establish, all right, Earth is in the galaxy, or Earth is where the humans come from, or they're not, that greatly changes the rules of your universe. Now, obviously, take Star Trek, for example. Star Trek has space battles, right? Those humans come from Earth. It's in the future of Earth. And in space, you can hear the weapons, right? In real life, as we understand it right now based on science, there's no way in the vacuum of space for you to be able to hear the phasers and photon torpedoes and lasers and all kinds of other weapons that Star Trek has while in space. But they add it into, the cinematic experience of it because it adds an element of fun and entertainment and excitement compared to just seeing bright flashes but then no noise, right? So you just have to understand, if you're going to base things off of Earth, you are going to be dealing with people who are going to be very particular. Now, in my opinion, this is just Rick Graham's opinion. Take it for what it's worth. I set out with Revelations, which is my sci-fi universe that I'm creating, and I set out with the idea that I want it to be, even though the humans do not come from Earth, I have reasons for that, which I discussed in episode 3, but I want science to remain intact as much as possible, but not at the expense of rule number 1 being entertainment. Now, to me, I think that the more that I learn about science, and I am not a really in-depth science nerd or anything of that sort, is that, I learn a little bit here and there from different YouTube videos and different people, who are going around talking about science and how things really are compared to movies and, video games. And I felt inspired that I want my stuff to kind of be possible. Right? I think it's amazing when they find out that, oh, wow, that was in Star Trek, but you know what? That actually might be the way that things would work. Or, not with everything, but they have certain things that they get by. So, you have to decide the rules, the sandbox that your universe is going to work in. And that is a big decision. Do not take this lightly. Do not think that I'm just brushing over it because I do a quick video. This is something where everything kind of builds from this, right? Because you have to decide, all right, are you going to have some sort of element of magic or something like the Force from Star Wars? Or, are you going to be completely, there's nothing out there whatsoever. There's no spiritual aspect, or if there is, there's nothing where it interferes with the natural, or, there's just an abundance of alien races, or there's no alien races. You could go for a sci-fi experience where you're like, look, there's no sentient life except for humans. Battletech and the MechWarrior universe go off of that. They have not found any alien life that's even remotely close to sentient, except in maybe one book that you could argue. And as I understand it, they were more of like caveman level of intelligence. They were not, developed superior races that we normally depict in sci-fi. So this is a big deal discussion for you to have with yourself and maybe whoever else is helping you with this project as you're writing and building this. But at the same time, I would caution you not to allow your imagination to overwhelm you. And if you're anything like me, it's very easy to do so. And unfortunately, I started working on Revelations back in 2008. I got the inspiration for it. I had a whole bunch of ideas, some characters, the nations, a bunch of stuff started coming together. I'm like, fantastic, I want to work on this. I had no idea what I was doing. And I got to the point where it became too hard for me to answer questions about, okay, well, how do the weapons work when they're in combat? How can I explain? I wanted to have mecha in there, and I was like, well, how do I explain how those work? How do I explain why those are there? How do I explain how they're made? And it starts getting just like, well, okay, then how do all the nations click together? It gets really out of hand really quick. You need to take this in pieces. That would be my advice to you. Take it in pieces. Take it in digestible parts, We're going to get into outlining in the next couple of videos, and we're going to start going over in pieces how you can start outlining your very first short story. And, within a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, you should definitely have your first published work if you follow the steps that I'm going to go over in the next videos. But work on what you need to. Don't get into super in-depth of the history of your universe. Only work on what you need that's relevant to the story, the one story you're trying to tell right now. Yes, your imagination will be like, oh man, but we could tell this, we could do this, we can go here, we could tell all these exciting adventures. Yes, and you can, but don't allow yourself to get overwhelmed, because your creativity will quickly outpace the logic side of your brain as it tries to okay, well, but how do these things work? But the creative side is just like foaming at the mouth, and it's just like trying to just run down the street, and it doesn't work that way. At least not for me. Now, maybe you're somebody who you're very knowledgeable of science, you can just quickly just write down a whole bunch of ideas and notes, and boom, you're off to the races. But if you're anything like me, you need a little bit of time to really try to figure these things out. Now, at the same time, I wouldn't take so much time to figure out the general rules of your universe to where you never write, because you're like, well, I need to make sure all this stuff is thought through really in depth. You should. But you know what? One of the things that we have as authors is we do have some creative liberty. And, one trick that I do, and I've actually gotten comments about people saying, wow, that was really good. You did that really smart, or, it's a really good way you explained it. But a lot of the times what I found, because I'm not super knowledgeable about science, and I don't want the science side of my science fiction to be the thing that stops me from writing or from telling a great story. But at the same time, again, little caveat, not trying to go out of my way to break the rules of science. But what I do is I try to stay sort of vague for how things work. So, for example, I have plasma weapons, and one of the nations in Revelations, that rhymes too much, uses a lot of plasma weapons when they're fighting. I have no idea how plasma weapons should really work. I have very little comprehension of how that works. So what do? I just kind of describe very vaguely, very briefly, how it works and the type of damage it does, or at least I know in my head, okay, plasma is going to melt things or burn things or whatever it's going to do. And then I'm like, okay, well, we'll just kind of work with that. And as I become more intelligent, as I become more knowledgeable about the science behind science fiction, how it's possible maybe one day to have a plasma projectile type weapon, then all right, then I'll start incorporating some of these bigger ideas. But until I get to that point, I'm going to stay relatively vague. I'm going to focus more on character development, plot, plot twists, different things like that. The stuff that I can handle as an author is the story elements. I don't want my readers getting so lost in the plasma weapons or the lasers or the mechs or the space travel that they lose out on the story either. So you got to try to find a balance with that. But if I were you, you are going to have to spend some time defining the rules, especially if you have some sort of magic or spiritual sense that really affects the story. You're really going to have to try to figure out at least just a loose box that your story is going to live in. And you can add details as you go. Don't think, man, I got to know everything. Don't worry about that. And if you ever contradict yourself, you can change it. Or you can update it. Or you can just pretend you never wrote it. I don't want to excuse bad writing. But I don't want to have you be paralyzed by yourself from writing what could be the next bestseller or the next amazing piece of content or story that changes the way that sci-fi is. If you keep yourself paralyzed up here, you're never going to be able to write. So, lesson of the day, tip of the day, figure out the rules, the general box that your universe works in. But try to limit yourself to only really worrying about the things that need to be answered. If you say that, your humans or whatever from your story come from Earth, you have a lot of answers already kind of provided for you. If you say that they're going to come from some other planet, then you do have to sort of define, okay, is it an Earth-like planet? Does it still follow like the general science and rules, gravity and you know, goodness, all the other laws of nature? Does it follow all of those, or any of those not there? And if they're not there, then you got to start figuring out, okay, like if the, I don't know, just something crazy. If the law of gravity didn't exist, how would life exist, right? How would that affect things? And then you have to change a whole bunch of stuff. I would recommend not doing that on your first couple times of being an author, but if you want to, have freedom to do it creatively. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have any other comments or suggestions, please leave those down below. If you're going to follow us on Facebook, it is Learn to Write Sci-Fi. That is our page. And if you're following us or would like to follow us on YouTube, it is White Light Media. All right. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you guys all again tomorrow as we continue this 30-day journey to help you become your first-time author or to start working on your next sci-fi adventure. We're on day 4 of the 30-day challenge. So, yeah, it's been fun so far. Anyway, hopefully these tips are helping you guys get your creative juices flowing. All right. See you guys again tomorrow.